Good evening, everybody. I'm Doug Peterson. I'm the president of the Central Minnesota Freethinkers, and I want to welcome you all here this evening. For those of you who don't know us, we're a St. Cloud organization of humanists, rationalists, atheists, free thinkers, and agnostics who meet regularly to foster a community of reason in the St. Cloud area. We meet the first Sunday of each month at the Good Earth Co-op for coffee and lively discussions, to which you are all welcome. And we also arrange special programs a few times throughout the year featuring noted speakers on various topics. Check our website at CM Freethinkers for more information. Tonight, it is my great honor to present Marie Alena Castle, a noted longtime Minnesota activist and atheist. Over the years, she's been involved in labor union issues, the anti-Vietnam War movement, was a charter member of the National Organization of Women when it established itself in Minneapolis, and has been involved in the abortion rights movement both before and after Roe v. Wade were passed. She's been active in the Hemlock Society, working for Death with Dignity, helped form Minnesota Atheists and was its president for 10 years. I'm worn out. She's today the communications director for Atheists for Human Rights and the editor of their magazine, The Moral Atheist. And we're lucky enough tonight she's here to introduce her newly released book, Culture Wars, The Threat to Your Family and Your Freedom. Thank you.
Well, thanks for, I wonder where you got all that biomaterial. I read it and I thought, where did you get all this?
You sent it to me.
Oh, well, there's been so much that I guess, anyhow, here I am, and I want to thank the Unitarian Universalists for letting us use the hall. Okay, I got to adjust this microphone. Okay. Our techie guy let me know if I'm talking too loud. Okay. I wrote this book. I've got this publisher guy who's been reading my stuff over the years, and I'd sent out, I wrote a little pamphlet that talked about how our lives are affected by religion-based laws. It was just a little pamphlet that kind of just went over lightly over the subject, and he got a hold of it and he says, you have to write a book about this. I thought, oh, what? Yeah, so you know all those causes I've been involved in. Yeah, I used to have this sweatshirt that said, stress is what happens when your gut says no and your mouth says yes, I'd be glad to do it. So, I just, these causes come up and my hand goes up. Yeah, okay, so here I am. So he says, write this book. Oh, okay, why not write a book? And I've written all kinds of stuff, but I never wrote a book before. But I thought, okay, I'll do this. And I never do it again. You have to do footnotes. You have to do research. I'd rather just run off at the mouth. But I had to back up everything I said. And so I had to do, my floor is littered with books and have everything clippings. And so I could back up everything I said. Oh. And now he says I should write another book, an update or something. I said, nope, the next book I write is not going to require any footnotes. I'm not going to do that. So I don't know. Anyhow, so I got into this and I realized that for the distributors I had to fill out a form that talked about the book. I had to have a biography, and I had to say who the book was written for, and how it was unique and all that. And I had to list at least 3 books written in the last 5 years that cover the same subject and talk about how they're similar or different or whatever from my book. So I'm on Amazon.com and I'm going through my whole library of 200-300 books and talking to people. I said, I got to find another book that covers this topic. And lo and behold, I couldn't find one. And it talks about, we have all kinds of books written by atheists where they complain about religion one way or another, and they're all very good books. And of course, I've got tons of books about religion. I used to be a good Catholic, and I got all their old Catholic books. Boy, they are a good resource. Anyhow, so I couldn't find anything that actually covered the subject that I was talking about, which is we are supposed to be a secular nation, and they all say this is not a Christian nation. But when you look at the laws we live under, I was just astonished because these are all religion-based laws. They affect every bit of our lives from birth to death, even before birth with the whole conception thing and birth control, and until you die. So, and we don't even realize that they're religion-based laws, all right? Now here's an example. In Minnesota has just passed a law that authorizes gay marriage, same-sex marriage. And that's fine. I mean, the House passed it a couple days ago, the Senate passed it today, the governor's going to sign it tomorrow, 3 cheers. So, but in none of the arguments that they make do they say that to forbid same-sex marriage is a violation of the First Amendment because it's an establishment of religion. They never, ever address the idea that this law, if you deny same-sex marriage, you are establishing a specific religious doctrine into law. And is that not an establishment of religion? Well, how more can you establish religion than to have laws that force us all to live by certain beliefs? Well, anyhow, so the book is all about those laws, and I've got to make another speech in a couple of weeks. We're going to talk about somebody who wrote a book about how this is not a Christian nation. It goes on, and I've read books about this. It's not a Christian nation. When you look at the laws, yes, it is. Okay. Now, in my book, I'm talking about when Kennedy made that famous speech supporting state-church separation, and he's upholding the Constitution and everything else. And he was, at the time he spoke and supported state-church separation, we had laws, these racial discrimination and Jim Crow laws. All of these were religion-based. Blue laws restricting what businesses could sell and when. We still have. Severe restriction of access to contraception and sterilization. Prohibition of abortion. Prohibition of reality-based sex education. Censorship of books and all other media. Prohibition of homosexuality. Laws against atheists holding public office. Denial or restriction of child custody for non-religious parents. Restriction of grounds for divorce. Prohibition of cohabitation. Prayer and Bible reading in public schools. Prohibition of suicide, even to shorten unbearable suffering. Preferential tax exemption for religion. Moral squads enforcing laws against gambling, drinking, erotic dancing, and non-marital consensual sex. Religious language replacing secular statements in our national motto, money, and Pledge of Allegiance. Now, at the time Kennedy was saying what a great secular nation this was, and we had state separation, and he said, we had all these laws, and some of them have been chipped away. And today, the same-sex marriage, that pretty soon I can take that off my list, because that's a done deal, because we've taken slavery off the list, we've taken divorce off the list, and a few things like that. But most of these things are still there, and they control our lives. And you can't escape them. You can be an atheist that doesn't believe anything about a God, but you're going to have to live by some of these laws. So, at any rate, that's what the book is about. It's about all these laws that people don't even realize are based on religion. I don't know, anyhow. The arguments on same-sex marriage in Minnesota, they print in the paper all the pros and cons, and all the arguments against it, every single one brought up the idea that this God doesn't want this. God only wants marriage between one man and one woman. Of course, in the Bible, it's one man and one or more women. But at any rate, so that's how come I wrote the book, to talk about all these laws. And it's not against religions. It's against religious brutality. So if we're in this universalist, Unitarians are fine people. The Quakers are fine people. They don't hurt anybody. I love them. But some of these religions are absolutely tyrannical and cruel and abusive. And when I wrote the book, and I've got stories about how these laws affect people, it's just, you almost cry because you think, how can they treat people this way? But they do it in the name of God. And that's fine. And the law says it's fine. Anyhow, so unlike other atheist books that criticize religion about the beliefs and talk about whether there's a God or not, I don't care if there's a God or not. care what people believe about it. So what I wrote in the preface, because I've been there and done that. Okay, this is a report from the trenches. I am not a personally unaffected or side observer pondering the social political dilemmas that center on religious beliefs. I have stood face to face with religious theocrats and seen the coldness in their eyes, and I've experienced the hardness of their hearts, and I've been to the funerals of their victims, and I've watched beautiful human potential shredded in the service of their barbaric beliefs. I have fought mightily to keep that sadistic worldview out of our laws, and I'm not done yet because humanity deserves better. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I wrote the book. I really take this stuff seriously. So, however, I have a lot of sympathy for, I came from a strong Catholic background and just, I'm not going to talk about it, it's all. Well, yeah, I was pregnant 10 times. I mean, how much more of a good Catholic can you be? And oh my goodness sakes, and damn near died a few times, and terrible things happened, and anyhow. But I realize that the people who are caught up in this religion have a lot of sympathy for them because I know how you can get drawn into it. And so people who say, oh, you're just bashing religion. Well, wait a minute. See, let me tell, here's what I wrote. I gotta write this, read this part about, show you that. All right. Okay. In fact, my publisher really liked it because it showed that, I'm not just bashing religion, that I understand what's going on. I have these old Catholic books, and here's what I said in this one part of it about it. One Catholic priest, John A. O'Brien, writes the following in his book, The Faith of Millions, in a chapter on the joy and fulfillment marriage brings to men. He doesn't say much about what it brings to women other than economic support. Yeah, that's true. So here's what this poor guy writes. He says, among the worst miseries of life is that of unrelieved loneliness. To go to one's dwelling at evening, only to find it empty of any person interested in your struggle, rejoicing in your achievements, softening the sting of defeat, and the balm of sympathy and understanding is to live in a darkened chamber where the sunshine of human comradeship and love scarcely penetrates. As other forms of life, when deprived of the sun's rays, wither and die, so human life, robbed of the sunshine of love and sympathy, loses its zest, its enthusiasm, and its vigor. Love is the radiance which brightens the world of human life as the sunshine of happiness. Okay, that's what he writes. So I read that. I never forgot when I read that, because I says, it's easy to sense here the unrelieved loneliness of a dedicated priest who entered the ministry too soon to know what he would be sacrificing. Where do such men go if the loneliness becomes unbearable? To prostitutes? To vulnerable altar boys? There is no sunshine of love and sympathy there, only the sloppy fusion of genitalia, as I once heard it rather graphically described, and this is very sad. So there is that sympathy there that I have for these people who are caught up in this, but for the ones who preach this stuff, oh my God, I have only absolute hatred. Okay, and the acknowledgments. You always thank everybody for helping you write the book and did all this stuff. And I decided to also acknowledge the religious, brutes who do this sort of thing to people. And you'll see it all through the book. So I said, let me start by briefly recognizing those whose indirect and unintentional help I certainly did find invaluable, but who are not fit to be in the same room with decent human beings. They are the authoritarian religious misanthropes who have injected their bizarre theology and inhumane doctrinal demands into our laws, and who have sucked much of the joy out of life for their victims. Just quoting the pompous theology and Bible-thumping claims coming from the Vatican and Protestant fundamentalist extremists gives credibility to my assertions. So I hereby acknowledge their willingness, actually arrogance, in being so forthcoming with their self-incriminating pronouncements. Oh, you should read these pronouncements. Oh, that pretentious blather, and they go on, and they sound like they know what they're talking about, and they don't know a damn thing. So that's really the flavor of the book. It's very outspoken. You can kind of tell. And the chapters, I kind of cover pretty much everything. I have the first chapter, Interpreting the Constitution, where you think, oh, we have a Constitution, and it's got, you know, freedom of religion and freedom from religion, all that stuff, and it's going to protect our rights. The Constitution does not protect your rights one bit. We don't live under the Constitution, we live under constitutional law. And that constitutional law is what the courts say the Constitution means. And over time, it has said, you know, like the Dred Scott decision, which said slavery was okay. All right, so the courts will take away your rights just as much as they will reinforce them. So you can't really count on the Constitution itself. It's what the courts say it means. And so that's a real problem. And I got all kinds of quotes, you know, from the justices and everything that would scare the crap out of you, really. And then I've got this section on the theology of sex, because for some reason these extremist religions seems to be so obsessed with sex, and you kind of wonder what's wrong with them. So I know what Catholic theology is, you know, and it's just not, oh, we believe this, we believe that. It's why they believe it. And so I've got the actual theology, and they actually really do base their beliefs on their idea that the Garden of Eden really existed. They really do that. And I've got the exact quotes that says, you know, their beliefs are based on, there really was a Garden of Eden and then Adam and Eve and all that stuff. So, and this is where the laws come from. That's the foundation of these crappy laws. So, so I explained that whole thing. You'll love the theology of sex. It is just, it is so bizarre. Then I got the one on homosexuality called Dumb as a Rock, Theology and Nature's Sexual Diversity. They haven't the faintest idea what sex is all about. They don't understand evolution, they don't understand anything. And then the one on women and religion, an abusive relationship. I know, God, it's just pretty horrible. And then theology-based healthcare. Okay, that's where you're all in trouble, because you realize they have laws that where a religion person's conscience overrides everything you possibly want. You got a living will, forget it. If you get somebody taking care of you whose conscience says you're going to live as long as possible and suffer as much as possible because that's their religious belief, by golly, that's what you're going to do. And so there's all kinds of stories about how the conscience overrides everything, every law, everything. It's absolutely paramount. They started the conscience thing after the World War II when they had the Nuremberg trials. And the people who were forced, the doctors who were forced to perform terrible experiments on Jews, they said, but I had to do it, I was following orders. And so they passed laws that you can't force people to do that, that they have to be allowed to follow their conscience, which was just fine. But then as soon as the Roe v. Wade was passed, all of a sudden they're up in Congress and they're passing laws saying if your conscience doesn't allow you to, to support abortion rights, by golly, I mean, if the woman dies, so what? You know, it's okay. She can die, and your conscience is, you can't be prosecuted or anything. So they have actually, and then they'll make you suffer before. Oh, I got a whole chapter on how really we've legalized torture in the name of protecting these people who believe that only God can let you die or something. So, at any rate, that's. You really should read the healthcare issue, because you're going to be scared to death to get sick. And you have to be really careful, because you don't know. You can go to a secular hospital, but they bring in hospitalists. These are companies that will provide hospital care for a certain unit in the hospital, sometimes for the whole hospital. So it's a secular hospital, but they hire this company that brings in their doctors and everything, and they take care of this whole part of the hospital for the hospital. And a lot of times those companies are Catholic, and they're going by the Catholic bishop's directives. on ethical directives for healthcare, which is, I mean, you'd think it was right out of the Inquisition sometime, the way, you just have to suffer for Jesus. And so that's a real thing that you pay attention to. Then there's a chapter on no right to know, science, education, and free expression. And that's how the religious laws affect whether you're going to find out the truth about science. They constantly, at the state level, see, some of these laws are state level, some are federal, but at the state level, they're constantly passing laws to downplay evolution and try and get creationism in there and doing all that. So it's very difficult. So they just keep you from, they try to indoctrinate you instead of giving you knowledge. Then there's this 2 chapters. I had to do 2 chapters on this, on the tax thing. One is religion and taxes, freeloading at its finest. You have no idea how the government lets religions get away with almost anything. They pay no taxes, they're not accountable. They, there's even, I think the IRS did a survey one time. There's a certain percentage of religions that actually are money laundering fronts. They're just criminal operations that front of the church, because the IRS has no right to tell you whether you're a church or not. And if you say you believe something, you're a church, they have no right to question it, because they're protected by the First Amendment. They have a right to believe what they want. And even if it sounds pretty bizarre, if you say you're a religion, then you are a religion, and you get tax exemption. And then you don't file any 990 form. You're totally unaccountable. Money comes in, money goes out. There's no way of tracking it. If you go bankrupt, you can't in Minnesota. The church, if you're giving tithes to if somebody's giving tithes to the church, that money cannot be used to pay what the church what you're owed to resolve your bankruptcy. The church gets to keep their money under all circumstances. You're just and the government doesn't really challenge any of this, because when you start trying to challenge the church, they lose every time. Oh, the church is great, it's such a wonderful organization. And then there's the other one, the nation's most favored welfare recipient. That's about all the giveaways, the property and the perks and everything that government gives away to churches. They pay to have the church restored for some reason. They didn't used to do that. They give them land. They give them, in Minneapolis, they gave away prime downtown land to St. Thomas College, downtown land. And I was involved in that fight trying to keep it, so it'd be tax-paying property. No, the churches get their way all the time. And you talk about a welfare queen. Religion is the biggest welfare queen you're ever going to find. You get everything handed to them. So, and then there's the one about public religion, insults and injuries. Well, that's all the God talk. The under God and the pledge and the motto, religious graffiti on our money, and God this and God that on the buildings and everything. And so that's. And that's, you think that's kind of trivial, and it's always treated as kind of trivial. But really, I did an amicus brief when Michael Newdell was challenging Under God and the Pledge. Went into the records of the time when Under God and the Pledge was passed, and I find out that the guy who introduced the bill introduced it because atheism was, you can't be patriotic and be an atheist. They're evil and corrupt, and it was all about bashing atheists. That you had to put the Under God and the Pledge to show this was a religious nation, and because atheists were just unpatriotic, could not be trusted, terrible things. And President Eisenhower was saying the same thing, and they were all saying the same thing, that they had to have Under God and the Pledge. So it was really an anti-atheist slur. It wasn't there to honor God or anything like that. And it wasn't against communism, otherwise they would have said one nation under free enterprise or something like that. But it was clearly, I had the whole record in the amicus. That was fun writing that. I didn't have to do the legal stuff because I had our pro bono lawyer. He was really nice. And he made sure I had all the citations right. He'd look up that you have to have a certain format when you do an amicus. So he gave me a copy of them because of this is, okay, all right, so this is what you do, all right. So then he took care of, when I wanted to cite a legal thing, he had all the numbers that you put in and he did all that good stuff. So that was fine, so it made it really a legal document. But I did all the research on how that happened. And at the time, they even had a law that almost passed. I think it failed by probably one vote, that it would be okay not to give unemployment compensation to an atheist. That, you know, if you're unemployment, yeah, you could leave out the atheists on that. So they were doing all sorts of things at that time, strictly to bash atheists as unpatriotic, you know, not fit to be good American citizens and all that stuff. Anyhow, so I had a whole chapter on that. And then I wind up with something called To the Barricades, about what we're going to do about this. And I don't know, sometimes I think we should just let the religions run wild and they will dig their own hole and people will, like they did in the last election, dump them out of office because they overplay their hand. So I don't know what. Anyhow, so that's what the whole thing is about. So it's different from any other. If you've read any atheist books, you'll find out that this is totally different from the others because it talks about something that none of the others talk about. I don't know why they don't deal with the laws. I keep reading all these books about this is a secular nation. Just Ed Buckner and his son just wrote a book about how this is not a Christian nation. And I know Ed, I got to talk to him. I say, Ed, yes it is, for Pete's sake, look at the laws. So at any rate, that's about what this is all about. And I think, I don't know what to do about it because to get it talked about, you have to have the media pay attention. And I have found out that the media, if it amounts to questioning religious beliefs, you can't talk about it. I was involved with Rita Swan and Children's Healthcare is a Legal Duty when that's the Christian Scientists let a kid die in Minneapolis, and then we had a law that said faith healing is health care, and so the people weren't prosecuted, and I thought, what, we have a law like that? Oh, it must be, we have, so I go and talk to I know all these legislators, so I go and talk to Bill Luther, he was a senator at the time. I says, hey, you know what, we got to get rid of this law. And yeah, I talked to my others that I know real well. Yeah, well, they were willing to introduce the bill. And I go around lobbying to the legislators. And Mary Jo McGuire, I remember her, she was really nice. I went and told her about this law that says faith healing is health care and that the kid was allowed to die. And she says, we have a law that says that? And she was horrified, they didn't know that. But then there's others that said, oh, but doctors don't really cure everybody either, you know, but they have a little better track record. And I go to these hearings, we had all these hearings, it was just heartbreaking. And Rita Swan got up there and she talked about the Christian Science beliefs. And she's very professional. She's not like me, she doesn't go on and on. She's very, very textbooky, like a professor, and tells them this is the Christian Science belief. Very straightforward, no bashing whatsoever, this is the belief. And they actually believe that disease does not exist unless you allow it to exist in your mind. If you admit in your mind that the disease exists, then it comes into existence. And you're not supposed to laugh at that? And these legislators, the ones that were just going to protect religious beliefs, they accused her of bashing religion. And all she did was describe the belief. But that's what it was. So and she gets nowhere. She gets no help from any other organizations. There's no liberal churches that support her. Well, maybe some universalist churches do. Because to be on her side, you have to criticize religion. So you can be on the side of gays without criticizing religion. You can be on the side of women without criticizing religion. But you cannot be on the side of children's health care as a legal duty without criticizing religion. It's not possible because it's the belief itself that is the problem. So anyhow, she and her husband have been trying so hard to get these laws rescinded in all these states. They chip away little by little by little. There's still a bunch of them that still let their, the laws won't prosecute. If you let your kid die, the law says, doesn't do anything about it because the law says it's okay. When we were having the hearings, our sponsors, I mentioned the names in this book too. I don't let it. John Marty, very liberal. I love this guy, but he was immovable on the Christian Science thing. Oh, we have to respect those people, well-meaning parents, well-meaning beliefs. Well, they're letting the kids die. Well, that's a shame, but how is he gonna, he just can't interfere with their wonderful beliefs. It's their beliefs. Oh, and Alan Spear, he who's died since then, and he was against us. They had the basic committees we had to go through. And I talked to him, and oh my God, he says, oh, you're just an atheist, you're just here to bash religion. As though we have no feelings whatsoever. So that's what I was up against, so I couldn't get anywhere. But then we had Phil Carruthers in the House and Jane Raynham in the Senate who sponsored our bills, and they were just ferocious. They just worked their butts off to make some headway. And I remember when Phil Carruthers was questioning this one woman, Christian Science, she didn't want the law rescinded because she kept saying, if you rescind the law, I wouldn't be allowed to fail. And Phil Carruthers says, what do you mean you wouldn't be allowed to fail? Hems and haws, hems around one. What do you mean you wouldn't be allowed to fail? She finally had to admit she wouldn't be allowed to let her kid die. And so that's, you had to keep that law there so that this is what you have to put up with. And they've had these laws, and they think it's just okay to have laws like that. You have to honor these crappy beliefs. And so this book is just all about all those crappy beliefs that are in our laws. And I don't know what to do about it. Well, I do, but it takes a lot of organization. And what we do, same-sex marriage, we can pretty much cross that out pretty soon. Oh, the Supreme Court has to rule to make it, because we have different states that allow same-sex marriage, but some have it in their constitution. And so to get it national, the Supreme Court is they're gonna take the case, and they'll have to rule. Because they only take cases if it's challenged. So before the Civil Liberties Union was formed, we had violations of the First Amendment galore. But nobody challenged it because it cost too much money. You just couldn't afford, and then the Civil Liberties Union came in. And so then they could start challenging the laws. But then the Supreme Court won't take it unless there's a controversy. So you have to have the law, the laws passed in one but not another, so there's a conflict. So we have that with the marriage amendment, because some states approve it and some don't. So now you have a controversy. So now the Supreme Court can rule on it. The question is, how are they going to rule? And there's only one way they should rule, and that is that this is putting a particular religious belief about sex and marriage into law, and that's a violation of the Establishment Clause. That's all they have to do. So, in every one of these chapters, I argue that first I give you the whole story about the whole thing. Then I end up with a chapter that says no secular justification, and then I argue that there's absolutely no secular reason why you have to have any of these laws. And I got some books to sell here, okay? Now, if any of you can find a valid secular justification, because you can say there's a justification for slavery because people can make money, but doesn't count. You can't hurt people. So if you can find a secular justification for any of these laws, I'll refund your money for the book. But I'm totally confident that there is absolutely none. So I don't worry about that. At any rate, so there we are, living under these laws in this supposedly secular government, and it's chock-a-block with religion-based laws that people don't even think about or realize. You'd be surprised, okay? Wait till you read the conscience stuff. Oh, God. So that's about it, I think. Oh, you can get this book from Barnes & Noble. Online, it's always cheaper than in the store. Online, Barnes & Noble is selling it for $11.63, and Amazon.com is selling it for $11.43. You can have it here for $10. And all the money I'm making, I would love to have this, what if it got to be a big $1 million seller? Because all the money is going to be devoted to our Atheist Human Rights Moral High Ground project, which we have. Only one in the country, and I wish they were all like this. We have a fund that supports the victims of these religion laws. We have a fund that helps poor women pay for abortions in the states where they're doing everything possible to keep them from getting an abortion. I've got really sad stories about that. And then we have a fund that helps pay for a scholarship for gay students to show that we support their cause. And they have this P-Fund, Philanthropy Fund thing that we donate to for that. And a couple of years back, they got up and they announced, who gets the grant, the scholarship grant, and they announced who donated it. And I never forget when the MC, she's announcing our recipient of our grant, and then she announced that Atheist Human Rights donated, and she says, "They stand with us!" And everybody cheered. And so that's how I think the free thought community can prevail, by nationally being the group that's known to stand up for these people, that we are on the side of these people. And instead of nitpicking about God talk, which is bad enough, but nobody cares about that. But if you show, people are emotional, and so you got to give them something to be emotional about. And so the gay marriage thing worked pretty well. And so we got more things to do. But yeah, so that's, we have to be publicly standing for the victims of, and I know we clean up the highways. Yeah, we do that. We got to do that in a couple weeks back in Minneapolis. Clean up the highways. We do that, and donate blood and do all that good stuff. But the churches do that too. But we have to be different. We have to claim the moral high ground, and we have to say, this is the moral high. I had one atheist, not all of them are moral, okay? Because I had one that we started the moral high ground thing, and I says, yeah, we're going to have, fund's going to help poor women pay for abortions. And he says, you call that moral? Well, okay, yes, I do call that moral. So, and anyhow, so that's what I think we have to do, but, whatever, maybe someday. So that's, I don't know, I think I ran out of notes. I could probably talk more about anything, but I don't think I will. I should say something about Final Exit Network. Okay, here's a sample. In Minnesota, now, Final Exit, I don't know how much you know about Final. Actually, I was supposed to bring you some of their brochures and stuff, and I forgot because I had so much to do, so I'll just tell you about it. Final Exit Network helps people to do a self-deliverance. This is not suicide. Suicide is done, a hasty, tragic kind of thing, self-deliverance is a well-thought-out, rational decision, because you've been suffered enough, you figured you had all the life you care to have, you don't want any more, you want out, but you need some good advice. And Final Exit Network, if you're a member, they will come to you at no cost anywhere in the country, and I think the membership's only about $50. And they will help you. They will give you the advice on how best to do it. Like, don't take the pills because you have to have a doctor prescribe it, because you don't know your metabolism, and you're just going to botch the job. You may end up brain dead and terrible things. So, but they recommend the helium tanks, which you can get at party stores. That's kind of fun. You go to a party store and this cheerful, happy balloon-filling thing, and you're taking it home so you can kill yourself. Okay, but they tell you the helium works good. But right now, there's a problem because there's a shortage of helium. It's an administrative thing, because helium is the second most abundant element in the universe, so there's no shortage of helium. But there's a shortage of the storage of it, and it's got nothing to do with death with dignity. It's just bureaucratic crap. So the party stores are starting to put less helium in the tanks, and so I found out now that some of the stores will only fill 30 balloons, and Final Exit Network says, no, get 2 tanks, because it has to be enough to fill at least 60 balloons. So they give you advice. And so for giving advice like that, that's why they're in legal trouble, and and it costs money. They got in trouble in Georgia and Alabama, and the courts decided, well, this is just free speech. They're just talking to people. So they won, but it cost $600,000 to fight. And now it's already cost $200,000 in Minnesota, just to finally prove their innocence, because the courts are going to say, well, it's free speech. But what some of these people want is to put Final Exit Network out of business by forcing them to spend so much money to defend themselves that they can't afford to be in business anymore. So just go on your computer and Google Final Exit Network and get the information and find out what it costs and where to send your money and join, okay? And so, apologize for not bringing their literature, but it's a good organization. And they're the only ones that will help you, because the compassionate choices and all those places, and these states that allow physician-aided dying, you have to suffer first, you have to be terminally ill, you have to have no more than 6 months left to live, so if you actually live longer, that means you suffer longer, but you have to suffer. You know, there's got to be that 6 months of suffering before they'll let you do yourself in, and then the doctor just writes a prescription. You got to get it filled, you got to do it all yourself. Final Exit Network says you just have to have a hopeless condition that it's not going to, it has to be an accurate diagnosis, like Alzheimer's or ALS or something. Not terminal, but hopeless, and you're not going to put up with it anymore, and you want out. And they will give you the advice, and they'll tell you. But what they do, I could get arrested for telling you about the balloons, that you need one, that you've got to have enough for 60 balloons, okay? That we have a Minnesota law that really says that's against the law to tell people that. So anyway, that's the situation. So that's another one of our crappy laws. Where only God says when you can die, but how come you go to doctors to keep you alive then? Okay. Well, anyhow, so that's what we have to put up with. And it's a tough battle, and I've been going at this crap. If it isn't one damn thing, it's another. For about 50 years now. God, I'm 86 years old. I'll have to live forever, I suppose. But anyhow, that's what I do with my time. I fight these losing battles and maybe win a few here and there, little by little. And okay. I don't know. I don't want me to talk about anything else. Just ask them. Any questions? Any secular justifications for any of these laws? I dare you. You aren't gonna. Okay. Okay.
No questions?
Okay. All right.
It looks like things are changing for gays and homosexuals.
Yeah.
Lots of change here, hopefully that in Minnesota, and presumably it's changing across the country.
Yeah, the key will be the Supreme Court decision. The Supreme Court has to rule for nationwide, because there's states that have it in their constitution. And once you have it in a constitution, it's hard to change. But so if the Supreme Court will rule that, yeah, that this is a nationwide thing, then we're home free. Then I can take that off the list.
But do you see any kind of public sentiment moving to recognize that atheists aren't the least respected group in the country?
No way.
Or also,
No way.
that's the last thing you talked about.
Oh God, I think in this book.
Changing about compassion and dying, or
Yeah.
is that changing at all, or is that?
Oh, well, yeah, actually the polls generally show that people really want a physician aid in dying, but you can't get legislators to pass that. A lot of the things that get done is the result of people not understanding that all power lies with those who show up. So legislators will vote the wrong way. Like I had this example in Minnesota with a legislator, really good legislator. So he votes for NRA bill. So we have a meeting in the Senate district. Okay, what the hell did you do? Why did you vote that way? Well, he says, if I hadn't voted that way, then when we have the primary, in a primary election, they would run somebody against me. And all their people would turn out because they're all fired up about this. And everybody else would stay home thinking, oh, I'm going to be a shoo-in. And I would lose the election, and I wouldn't be able to do all the other good things I do. And we said, yep, you're right, yep, because I've seen this happen many times, that people do not take their civic responsibilities seriously. You have to, especially in primary elections, it's just never assume anybody's a shoe, and it might be the best legislator in the world. Don Fraser, if I don't know how many remember, lost the primary because the rednecks on the Iron Range turned out and the others stayed home because he's a shoe, and he was one of the best ones we ever had. So they have to worry about that. So they would, like with physician aid and dying, they probably would. But then you'd have, in the primary, somebody would run against them, and you'd have somebody from the disabilities people out there. There's a group called Not Dead Yet. It's a front for the Catholic Church. Catholic Church is behind it. And they claim that if you have physician aid and dying, they will have a duty to die. Because look, we're crippled up, and we would have a duty to die. So to satisfy them so they don't have a duty to die, you have to keep the laws in place so that everybody has a duty to suffer. So they won't have a duty to die, which they don't have anyhow. So you get all this emotional stuff going. So, and in taxes too. Oh yeah, one senator talked to him about this taxing in the churches and everything. And he says anybody who told the truth about taxes could never get reelected. Yeah, because there's all this, you have this tons of billions of dollars of money going out for religious purposes. That's just, the president has a fund that he can use for anything he wants. And so he's used, like George Bush used his money to funnel all kinds of money to churches because he could use it for anything he wants. The Supreme Court says that's okay. Oh, and vouchers, now the Supreme Court said that, see, I'm telling you about the Constitution, you think it's going to protect your rights? They now have in some states this tuition payment organization form says that we will provide tuition payments to private schools. And so you donate your money, okay, say you donate $500,000 to this tuition organization, and then you tell them which religious school you want to go to, and then it goes to that. And the government, on your income tax, gives you a credit, dollar for dollar credit. So if you've donated $500, then you put that on your income tax as a credit, government gives you back your $500. And that's how they fund religious schools. And the Supreme Court said that was okay. There was a dissenting opinion that said this is the worst damn bunch of hogwash you ever heard, and it's true. But that's what they do. That's why the Constitution isn't much help. It's just who's interpreting it. You've got Scalia and Roberts, and I got quotes from them. Don't count on them to help you, and Thomas and all those. So it's kind of a tough thing, Just you have to elect people that you don't have to lobby. And you have to just outvote the bad guys, and nobody cares about they have nominated somebody to the Supreme Court, and nobody, I've heard how many times they said, oh, the Supreme Court will protect us, we don't have to worry about who they nominate. Well, that's not true. So it's very frustrating, very frustrating. Okay? That's all I can say is go to your precinct caucus, go to your primary elections, pay attention, and you're in St. Cloud. Oh, I think I told Doug or somebody. Let me tell you how you do this. You're in St. Cloud. You've got crappy legislators and everything. I know about that. What you do is you call the women's rights organization. You go for the pro-choice thing because there's a pattern. If a legislator is pro-choice, they're going to be good on everything else too, okay? So you call, there's a pattern of thinking that just follows. And so you call NARAL and NOW, these organizations, and then you say that you're concerned about the political makeup of this district in St. Cloud. And they'll say, yeah, I know. And they say, who do you have in your membership that lives in this district that we can, okay, so they'll give you a name or two, phone number, And you call, I did this in Brooklyn Center. That's what I did. I called and I says, who do you have? They gave me one name, Vince Tubman. Called him, told him my concerns, because I moved into Brooklyn Center and went to my precinct caucus and it was 2/3 pro-life. I thought, what? And so I figured I had to change that. So I called Vince, told him my concerns. Yeah, I agree. I says, do you know anybody else that agrees? Yeah, there's these 2 people. Give me your names, phone number. Okay, I got them. Called them, told them my concerns. Okay, do you know anybody? And so they would know 1 or 2. So I go through this, every 2 years I'm on the phone, I'm getting more names and I'm getting them out for the precinct caucus, call them up, got a card catalog, call them up, make sure they get out. Who else can you get out? And every 2 years our numbers increased, little by little, by little, by little. And finally, after 10 years, we had the numbers, overwhelmingly, the pro-lifers went over to the Republican Party. Brooklyn Center has been 100% pro-choice ever since. And I was successful there, okay? And, I mean, now, how much, it doesn't, you only have a precinct caucus every 2 years, for Pete's sake. You get on the phone, and you get some people to help. I got people to help, but then they wouldn't do it, so I had to call for them anyhow, because, you just figure you're going to have to do it yourself, and just make the calls. Get them out there, and just chip away, and finally, well, how do you think the religious right took over the Republican Party? Well, they had a bunch of people in front of them, 200 people every Sunday morning that they could fire up with a bunch of crap, and out of the pew and into the precinct. I used to watch them coming in, and I want to know which precinct to go to, and I'd direct them to the wrong one. Well, yeah, I'm here to save fetuses. Oh, go that way, go that way. So I never played fair with them. People were really, sometimes people are really liberal, they're so liberal, their brains, they're so open-minded, their brains fall out. And I used to have this thing with this one woman, oh, she liberal and progressive, oh my goodness sakes. And she wanted to be fair with those pro-lifers, and we were on the resolutions committee together, and I says no. And I dumped the resolutions, even though I'm not supposed to, and I got specious arguments against them, and she, I will never forget that night when we voted on that. We didn't even have a quorum, and it was Memorial Weekend, and I won by 1 vote because the co-chair broke the tie in my favor, and every time I see him, I thank him again, and he says he knew what he was doing. Anyhow, so we dumped their resolutions, and the leader of the pro-lifers got up to the microphone and goes, oh, yeah, we can see we're not wanted in this party, we're leaving. I said, yeah, go. So they went. But I'm supposed to be terrible because I wasn't fair. I don't intend to be fair. Okay, anyhow. I love politics. You get to play dirty for such noble causes. Okay, any other questions?
I've been reading your book.
Yeah.
You did a lot of research. How long did it take you to do this?
Well, actually, if I'd have stayed at it and not procrastinated, I could have had it done within a year, but it took me a couple of years because I kept procrastinating. And I finally got it done. And now he wants me to write another book. Because I wrote the book, it's like, I don't know how many times in my life I've done things that I thought, what the hell did I do that for? Because I didn't know what I was getting into. And I just do it, and then I wonder, what am I? And I don't know. But I can't help it. There's no such thing as free will. You know that. If there was free will, I wouldn't be doing all this stuff. It's too much hard work, but I can't stop. Somebody wants something, my hand goes up. Okay. All right, that's it.